Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, today I'm going to show you how to craft a campaign strategy for your email marketing for your e-commerce brand. So if you've seen any of my content before, you may have seen this funnel. This funnel kind of represents the sales funnel that an e-commerce brand would have if they're working with us on their email marketing and SMS marketing. We kind of like build this back-end funnel out for them. And as you can see here, the campaigns part is circled in blue because that's the part we're going to be focusing on today. It's a crucial aspect of this funnel, so that's why it has a whole video dedicated to it. So let's get right into it. First of all, campaign emails and SMS have many functions. They can deliver valuable, evergreen content with a soft pitch at the end. They can announce product launches. They can be used to distribute one-time sales or promotional content. They can be used to celebrate holidays. You get the idea. But ultimately, the goal of your campaigns is to simply stay in front of your audience consistently and continue increasing their lifetime value over time. The bottom line here is that people are not always going to be in your flows. Your flows are based off specific actions or timelines that people are on in correlation with your brand, and they're not always going to be in flows. In fact, sometimes they'll rarely be in your flows. So campaigns are your way of staying in front of them, giving them good content, and keeping them buying from you. So they could always be receiving your campaign emails. So we're going to get right into how you can build a campaign strategy tailored to your brand. And at the end of this video, I'll explain how we can do this for you if you don't want to do it yourself. But in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can do it yourself. So building a campaign strategy comes down to many factors, but there are 5 key things to decide on and test over time. These are exactly what we go through every time we build a campaign strategy. So number 1 is sending volume. 2 is the number of plain text emails versus design emails. Number 3 is segmentation. Number 4 is value content versus promotional content. Number 5 is SMS volume. And yeah, these 5 things are decided based on things like how often people typically buy your products, the end goal for customers, which might be subscribe and save, for example, the actual problem that your brand's products solve, and the number of products you may have available. And then in this next page, we're going to go over each of these and how to build your own campaign strategy. But before you start any of this, nail down these things. Like, this video is going to be very step-by-step. Do what I'm saying in order to do this. So before you move on further or after you're done, get these 5 things noted down. Like, it should be just a quick note for each. Moving on, we're going to go deeper into each aspect that I just explained. So this section will be a bit longer because we're going to cover each of the 5 aspects of building a campaign strategy that prints money and moves product off the shelves. So the first aspect is sending volume. Sending volume is something that you should just test your way into, but the more content you can send out on a weekly basis without unnecessarily churning through your list, the better. The industry standard here is to start with about 2 to 3 emails per week and see how they perform. But if you're getting at least 40% average on open rates and a 1% average on click rates, then you can easily increase that to probably 3 to 4 emails per week. Sometimes even 5, maybe even 6. As long as metrics look good, you can increase another notch. But if opens are super low and clicks are draining, then it's probably best to scale down or take a closer look at your segmentation. We're going to get into that. But do not make an emotional decision here and scale down the amount of campaigns you're sending just because you're worried about making people mad. I've heard from multiple different brand owners that they just feel as if they're sending too many campaign emails. Then I'll say, like, okay, well, our open rate's good. They're like, yeah. Our click rate's good. They're like, yeah. Our sales is good. They're like, yeah. I'm like, are you getting a bunch of complaints? They're like, no, we just feel like we're sending too much. Like, you really can't make an emotional decision here. You have to look at the data and your inbox and realize, like, no one's complaining. Our spam rate isn't high. Our unsubscribe rate is like normal. You know, our engagement's good. Our sales are good. So there's no reason to think that you're sending too much. In fact, you should be sending more if all those things are aligned. So moving on, if all metrics look good, then there's no reason to scale down your volume. But there's an important caveat here, which is that this is assuming your deliverability is on point. So there's another video on my channel here about deliverability. You can go check that out if you just go to my channel. Also subscribe. And if your metrics are suffering, it's probably due to your list quality who you're sending to or your deliverability. For example, if your list is filled with subscribers who you haven't sent content to in a really long time and they've forgotten about you, your list quality might be really bad. Also, if you're sending to your entire list, which is full of a bunch of unengaged people, instead of a segment of people who have engaged with your content in the last 30 days, for example, then your metrics might also suffer. Lastly here, if your domain doesn't have the proper DNS records set up, your email content isn't optimized for deliverability, your sending reputation is poor, and you haven't cleaned your list in forever, then you likely have a big deliverability problem, and you should check out the deliverability video that is on my YouTube channel as well. All right, next aspect. So that was number one, which is sending volume. Aspect number two of your campaign strategy is plain text versus design emails. So there are 3 different types of emails: plain text, design, and plain text hybrid. Obviously, plain text emails are just text with 0 images. Design emails are full of cool graphics and buttons and headlines. But plain text hybrid emails are just plain text emails with some type of design element included. They're kind of like the middle ground between the two. And the rate at which you should use plain text emails versus design emails depends on how acute or specific the pain point is that your product solves. So for example, if you sell a hair growth supplement and that product solves a specific problem for the user, that means that it needs high-level copy in order for it to sell. Because nobody is pulling money out of their wallet to buy a supplement just because of how cool the picture of it was. On the other hand, if you sell something like t-shirts or watch straps, these items don't solve a specific pain point. They're also very visual products which are meant to be aesthetically pleasing. So in this example, they're better sold in a well-designed format, so a designed email. So like a long drawn-out sales letter about the quality of a Rick and Morty t-shirt is not what's going to sell that t-shirt. It's going to be like a really well-designed piece of content that sells that t-shirt. Now, keep this information in mind when you're deciding how much plain text content you should use in your campaign strategy versus design content. However, do not fall into the trap of thinking that you need to pick one or the other. You can absolutely and should use both. It's extremely effective to do it that way. That's how we almost operate for almost every single brand we work with. But the level at which way you lean depends on the essence of your products, which is exactly what I just went over. Next is segmentation. So segmentation is a huge issue. I've seen a lot of brands most make this issue or make this problem or make this mistake. And it requires a little bit more depth. So the next page I'm going to go over is going to be entirely about segmentation. But until then, just remember, do not make the mistake of sending every campaign to your entire list. We'll get more into that in a minute. So the next aspect, I believe this is the 4th one, is value content versus promotional content. So this is a really important principle to understand, that the volume of your content that is value-based depends heavily on the essence of your brand. So going back to this similar example, if you sell something like t-shirts, your content will be mostly promotional, but you can still do it in a really fun and engaging way. Like, I'll just give a quick example of this. Dr. Squatch is a brand who sells like soap, deodorant, men's products like that. But I've seen them, so they use a lot of design emails, but I've seen them use design emails on fun, creative things. Like they did an all-star starting 5 as if it's like a basketball team. They made it soap, and it was a design email, and it performed well for them, I'm sure. So that's just an example of how you can mix promotional stuff that's design heavy, like t-shirts, with a fun, engaging angle. Now, on the other hand, if you sell something like supplements, there are many, many, many things you could talk about that would provide a lot of value to your audience. And I have an angles creation video here on the channel. It'll show you step by step how to use AI to come up with unlimited email angles if you sell something like supplements or t-shirts, same thing. You can use it for any brand. Go check that out. Now, SMS volume. So just like email campaign volume, it's just something you should test into. Refer to that section for the information here, but it's good to start with just 1 to 2 a week. Now, we're going to get into segmentation. So segmentation is a very important practice in email marketing for a few reasons. Number one, it helps you give a more targeted message, which will convert better. It leads to higher open rates and click rates, which increases sending reputation, which increases deliverability. And it also allows you to send more frequently, thus giving yourself more chances to find angles that hit and make more money without giving people more content than they would like to see and making them churn. So with these points in mind, you essentially have the full picture as to why you should be using segmentation on your campaigns. But now I'm going to show you how. So there are a million different segments you could use, but below I'm pretty much just going to simply include a bulleted list of segments that you should consider using. And this is actually wrong. You shouldn't consider using them. You should use these segments. And after this section, I'm going to do an example campaign strategy for an example brand so you can see exactly how I would utilize these segments. So the link to this document, you can get this full document in the description. It's going to be like the full email and SMS training doc, 81 pages. And you can steal all these for yourself. But the list of segments that you should have available to you in your Klaviyo account, what they're for, are listed here. So first, you got engaged all time. This is kind of like your full list, if you want to think of it that way. It's every single person who has ever engaged at all who has not been suppressed. So you want to use this when you want to mail your entire list. Next, very, very, very highly used segment is the X day engaged segment. In this example, it's 30-day engaged. So these screenshots show you exactly how to set them up, but these are just me explaining what they are. So like I said, the X here can be replaced with 30 days, 90 days, 15 days, 180 days, whatever you want. Each of those are just different levels of engagement. And your goal with these segments is to mail to your most engaged subscribers to get higher open and click rates and to give them more frequent content than the others. Next, you have like 90-day buyers, X-day buyers, for example. So these are obviously your best contacts. Your buyers list is your most valuable list. And because they've proven that they're interested in what you sell and they want it, they are literally your best customers. Or they're your best people to mail to. So hopefully they've had great experiences with your products, so they will buy more in the future. And remember, the easiest people to sell to are those who have already bought from you. That's a message, or that's a quote from some of the direct response goats. So remember that. Next is an engaged buyers segment. So I lied. I actually lied in the last one. This list is actually even more valuable than the last one because these are people who have bought in the last X amount of days and they are engaged with your content in the same time frame. Next is all-time buyers that are X-day engaged. So this segment is just made up of all the people who have ever bought from you but are also engaged at some level with your content. Then you have non-buyers who are engaged. So this is a really interesting segment because these are all the people who have never, these people have never once bought from you, but they're engaging with the emails at some level, the emails that you're constantly sending them, your campaigns. So they're interested, but they haven't bought yet. So it's a valuable list that you should try to convert. You want to convert as many of these people as possible into buyers as soon as possible. Next, pretty bigger segment. This is going to be a bigger segment, probably one of the biggest of the ones we've looked at, which is the non-buyer segment. So these are all your non-buyers. You should mail to them exclusively once every week or two is what I suggest. All right, so now you have all the main tools you need to create a campaign strategy for yourself and follow it. But in this next page here, I'm going to give you an example campaign strategy for an example brand. So for this example, we're going to act like we're a pet supplement brand that primarily helps dog owners relieve their dogs of joint pain so they can move around like they're a young puppy again. Let's assume we have two different products. So sending volume here, we're going to send emails 4 to 6 times per week. Plain text versus design. Actually, let me explain. So we want to send emails 4 to 6 times per week for this brand because they solve an acute pain point. It's something that we can put more, like there's a lot of angles we can use for them. There's a lot of different things we can talk about. And we're also going to use high segmentation, so I'll get into that. Plain text versus design emails. So these will be mostly plain text due to the fact that our products solve a very specific pain point, which is the dog pain. And to sell them, it will require some emotional triggers, which can only be done through copy because people want to take care of their dogs. It's an emotional thing that can only be done through effective copy. And a heavy design email would not work very well for these people. Next is the segmentation. So we're going to mail to non-buyers 1 to 2 times per week. These are all going to be plain text or plain text hybrid emails. We'll probably mix in a little bit of design for things like sales, stuff like that. We'll mail 90-day repeat buyers 1 time a week. one time a week, trying to push them to our subscribe and save membership. These could be about half and half plain text and design because they're a pretty simple message and you just have to get the benefits of subscribe and save across to them. But they'll probably be more design because they've already tried the product. We just need to clearly display the benefits of subscribe and save. Next, we're going to mail value-based content with softer, more subtle yet well-placed call to actions to varying levels of engaged segments 2 to 3 times per week. These are mostly going to be plain text hybrid emails. And then a little bit creative for this brand, we're going to do a pet highlight on Fridays, which will be sent in by customers, which will be a design email highlighting a success story from one of our products. Now, we've got value content versus promotional content. So for this brand, simply due to the fact that it solves a very specific pain point and it lives in a large world of possible angles, which is pets, we're going to give a fair share of valuable content, but we still are going to sell in that valuable content. It's just going to be more subtle and strategic rather than a full direct response email. On the other hand, if we sold t-shirts or something, there's not really much value to be given here. Like I said earlier, you kind of just have to be more fun and engaging with that. So instead, if you had a t-shirt brand, you'd kind of have to go with content that's more entertaining or plays off trends, like modern trends, while weaving your products into the mix in different ways, being more creative. Now, SMS volume is the last piece of this. So we're going to send 3 SMS per week, which is a little bit high for most brands. But we're going to do 1 to non-buyers, 1 to repeat buyers about subscribe and save, and then 1 to a general engaged segment. So the big thing to remember here is that although we're sending 3 SMS per week, that doesn't mean that people are getting 3 SMS per week because the segmentation varies it. Same thing here. People aren't receiving 5-6 emails a week. What do we say here? 4 to 6 emails per week. Because the segmentation is different. Some might, but not everyone. All right, so that's it for the example strategy. Now we're going to go over some KPIs and benchmarks to shoot for. So when you're sending out campaign emails, it's really, really important that you're hitting your benchmarks in terms of numbers. The reason for this is that it's crucial. The reason that it is crucial is because if you let your metrics slip, you're going to mess up your sending reputation, and even worse, you'll just stop tweaking your content to meet whatever hits the best with your audience, which is probably the most important part of campaigns for e-commerce brands. And that can lead to a devastating blow to your overall performance on email and SMS. So really quick, here are the KPIs or benchmarks you should shoot for every metric. So open rate, you want at least a 40% average open rate or higher. Usually 50% is pretty solid. Click rate, you want at least a 1% plus average, but it's important to keep in mind if you're sending a higher volume, your click rate may slip, but your overall sales might increase. So it's not always a bad thing if your click rate dips a little bit lower than this. Just kind of depends on your volume that you're sending. Next is revenue. So this is 100% dependent to your store along with placed order rates. You can usually tell if they're doing well or not just based on the revenue that your store would be expected to bring in. It's very variable based on the store. Next is delivery rate. So this should always be like 99.7% or some really high percentage like that. Bounce rate, you want to keep this near 0 at all times. Any emails that are bouncing any more than a single time should usually be suppressed. Then lastly here, you got unsubscribe rate. So if you can keep this under 0.5%, then you're in a really great spot. But it'll naturally rise if you send more volume, most likely. However, this is kind of important, and I could make a whole other video on this. My take on unsubscribe rates, which I've adopted from people way smarter than me, is that if they're unsubscribing, then they probably weren't going to buy anyways. It's not a loss to us if more people are unsubscribing due to us sending more volume. The reason for that is because I'd rather send more often to the people that will eventually buy from us if it means I'm going to lose some of the people who are never going to buy from us. Like, it's an obvious trade to make. Next, we got a few campaign examples here. So if you are watching this on YouTube, you can go in the description and get access to this full document. You can look deeper into these and kind of use them as a swipe file. But yeah, a few campaign examples for you right there. Anyways, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. In the description, I'm going to leave a link to book a call with me and my team if you want a campaign strategy built completely for your brand. And we also guarantee we guarantee to increase your monthly email and SMS sales $30,000 to $100,000 a month in just 60 days, or you don't pay. And so yeah, if that interests you whatsoever, or you just want to have some flows set up or whatever you need, I'm gonna leave a link in the description. Book a call with me. Also, if you like this type of content, I send a weekly newsletter. I send 5 newsletters a week to my email list. Super value packed stuff just like this, high level principle stuff, as well as like deep skill stuff like this. And yeah, if you want to join, link in the description. You can join 100% free, and I'll see you in there.